that next week or the week after next week?
It's not next week. It's the week after. So we're almost, after today we'll be halfway through the chapter. So Friday we'll have our review, and then the test will be Tuesday. Or quiz. It's a quiz. Okay? So, all right. What we're going to do today actually is very similar to what we did yesterday. Okay, it's almost going to feel like, wait, didn't we already do this yesterday? It's just that yesterday I said we started with a parallelogram, and then what could you conclude? You could say opposite angles are congruent, or opposite sides are congruent. Remember the one with the diagonals? With the diagonals bisect each other? Okay. So now
we're going to figure out how to figure out.
So now we're going to say, what if you just have a quadrilateral and I say opposite sides are congruent? So if this is true, okay, then I automatically know it has to be a parallelogram. Okay, so that means this must be a parallelogram. Now, keep in mind, parallelogram, we can just draw the little parallelogram. That's our...
Without having those lines, could you already determine it's congruent?
No, you need to have the lines. Okay, now, if it's a parallelogram, what's the first part of the word? Parallel. So that automatically tells us, without labeling this, QR has to be parallel to PS, and QP has to be parallel to RS. Good? All right. Do you remember we talked about like the converse of a theorem, like when we switch it around? That's basically what we're doing today. So if you have opposite angles are congruent, then you have a parallelogram. So remind me, how do we know if they're opposite to each other? Like Q, okay, if they're opposite. Okay, so what would, like, diagonal to each other? So like Q would have to be congruent to, wait, which one would be opposite? S. And then P has to be congruent to R. Do all four have to be congruent? No, not necessarily. So again, if this is true, then we know, oops.
How do you know?
Well, that's what the theorem is saying. So the theorem says if both pairs of opposite angles are congruent, then this has to be a parallelogram. It's so I'm basically saying take a quadrilateral. Okay, quadrilateral just means it has four sides. So if I say this is 70 degrees, and this one's 70 degrees, and I say this is 110, and this is 110, does this have to be a parallelogram? It has to.
No,
Why?
I'm saying when you mark it, how?
What do you mean?
You mark the blank line.
Well, this is, what do you mean? I'm just labeling opposite angles
But
congruent.
how can that be right if one of them is, if the one across it is not the same? That can't be a parallelogram.
No, that's 70 and 70.
Isn't that 78 and 70?
No, this is a 70.
Oh, okay. I was so confused. I thought one of them was different. Okay.
Okay. All right. So we just want to say yes or no and then explain the reasoning. So is this quadrilateral a parallelogram? Yes. So explain your reasoning. So what's the reasoning?
Opposite sides are the same.
Not sides. What are these?
Opposite
Angles. I don't know because I'm abbreviating. If you don't,
They call me the abbreviator.
I won't mark you down if you don't put a period. I don't know. I guess sometimes if I abbreviate, I just put a dot after. Okay, what about B? No.
Do you have to give a reasoning or no?
Well, just opposite angles are not congruent, right? I mean, I guess. I think on the homework I had something similar, like write yes or no and then why.
Are the lessons we're doing by ourselves easier than this, or is it like the same thing?
I think so. I think it's a little easier.
Oh, really?
Because it's on like rectangles and squares. Like, okay. In quadrilateral WXYZ, WX is 15, YZ is 20, XY is 15, W is 20. Is this a parallelogram? Okay, so you're just going to go with yes? Yeah. Okay. I think maybe I'm going to draw a picture just to make sure. Okay, so I'm going to draw a...
How can you envision this in your head, though?
Okay, so we're going to see it. Well, that's why I'm saying that's why we draw a picture. Okay, now remember what I told you about labeling the angles? It doesn't matter where you start, but you have to go either clockwise or counterclockwise, right? Okay, so where do you want, so let's start with W. You can start W any of these points.
W.
Where do you want to start? You want to put W up at the here? Okay, we'll start here. Now, I could put X here or here, but I can't put X opposite.
Put it up
to it.
there.
You want to put it up here?
It's not.
And then Y and then Z. Okay, so WX is 15.
That's a side, right?
No.
Oh, everybody's saying no already. YZ is 20. XY is 15. Oh, so at first when we look at it, you're like, okay, it looks like we're going to have two matching sides and then two matching sides. But no matter how we draw this, are the opposite sides congruent?
No.
Nope. So, no.
Y is opposite YZ, right?
Opposite sides are not congruent. Does that make sense? So, again, don't just look at the numbers. Just make sure. I would draw like a quick sketch and then we can see. Okay, supplementary angles. Which ones were supplementary? Do you remember what they're called? It's right here. Oops. Same side interior or consecutive. Those are the same thing, actually. Okay. So if we have an angle that is supplementary to both of the consecutive angles, so I'll give you an example. We could do something similar to this. If we say this is 70 degrees, and then this one is 110, and this one is 110. Does it have to be a parallelogram? Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Because then automatically that fourth angle has to be 70 degrees. Okay. Tell whether the quadrilateral is a parallelogram.
Yes.
What do you think?
The other
Yeah.
side.
Do these two add up to 180?
Wait.
So we want to check, does 95 plus 85, does that equal? And then what about these two?
Yeah.
95? Yeah, because they're the same. And then automatically, if these two add up to 180 and these two, what does this one end up being? 95.
So each side needs to add up 20.
Yeah, so you could do, so this one's going to be yes. So you could say consecutive angles are supplementary. Or you could do opposite angles.
Is it yes or?
Yeah.
So to determine if it's like a parallelogram, you just have to add up each side and see if they
Yeah.
all equal 180.
So you could do these two angles here and these two, and then automatically that one will be the same.
What if you were given just sides?
Well then, what do you need to know about the sides? What did we say here? The sides.
All the lines.
Yeah, these have to be congruent. Okay, how about this one?
Wait, I had a question.
Oh, yeah.
So if it's consecutive angles, will also always be the.
They always have to add up to 180.
No, but will it always be the opposite angles?
Opposite angles have to be congruent. Consecutive angles have to be supplementary.
Sorry, what's the definition of consecutive?
Won't they always be true?
No. Okay. Well, sometimes. Okay. Let's look at this next one. What do you guys think?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You think yes?
Each side equals.
Okay. Each of these mean they're how many degrees? 90.
Each side's gonna be 90.
Okay. So these two, 90 plus 90. What about those two?
Also 90.
Can you say for the reasoning yes, each side? Oh,
Well, if you look at
Yeah.
across the
If you look, it looks like a 90-degree angle, but does it say that it is?
that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying like just if you look, if you go across, like
Opposite angle.
exactly.
Yeah, but the whole thing is, I don't know if this is
But
a
if a
parallelogram.
parallelogram needs to equal to 360, right? And 90
Okay.
plus 90 is 180. You need
Okay.
to have the other two sides 180.
Okay, I'll draw you a different picture.
wait, so it's not? It's no? Not yet.
Well, that makes sense. Different.
That's not a parallelogram. Yeah, but do we know what these two angles would be?
Looking at it.
I mean, if you're looking at it, it looks like it's 90, but can we ever know for sure? So, do we have enough information? No. So this one's going to be no, and this is not. Well, then you would get it wrong.
Hey, assumptions aren't always good, my boy.
Okay. Because, hey, what if this is 89 and this is 91? Then we have a problem.
Further reasoning,
How dare you say more?
further reasoning, could you just say,
Go. Yeah, it's okay. Avery had a question too.
further reasoning, could you just say, instead of like, yes, consecutives or supplementary, could you just say like, 90 plus 9, like, could you just say that like each angle adds up to 180, like on each
Yeah,
side?
you could say that.
Say that? Okay.
Okay, Avery, what was your question?
It still can answer the question.
What's your question on?
That if it's consecutive angles, and
Yeah.
it's like that, it will also always be the opposite side.
Well, that's why you have to have two pairs of consecutive angles. The theorem was you have to have an angle that is supplementary to both.
I know, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, and then the opposite angle will automatically be congruent.
So if it's like that, it can always be either one as the correct answer.
Okay, last one. If you have the diagonals bisect each other, what's bisect mean? Split it in half. So if this is true, we have ourselves a parallelogram. Half of the assignment is just, is it a parallelogram? Why or why not? Okay. So what do you think?
Yes.
This one's yes.
Wait, but
Did somebody spray something?
if it's cut in half,
What was
we'll
it?
automatically know it's yes, or does it depend on the
Can
number
you scroll
inside?
back up a little bit?
Sorry, Minnie, what was that?
So does it depend on the numbers and being split in half, or what does it depend on?
Yeah.
If you know, it just gets split like this.
So listen, you either have to have the markings, like the congruent marks, or you have to have numbers that say whether they're the same. You know what I mean? Like here I have markings, but here it says 19 and 19, 18 and 18. So yes.
The second one's no.
Okay.
It's kind of like you can see it.
Okay, so the next one is no.
The numbers don't match.
Right, diagonals.
Oh, it's just gonna be yes and then no and then yes and then no. That's kind of like that's a little pattern.
Yeah, except on the homework it's not necessarily.
If you look, because for the first one, it's because 18 and 18 go together and 19. and
Yeah,
19
like
go
these
together.
two are congruent and these two are congruent.
And
But here, these two are congruent, but these two, like, nothing matches. These two match, but that doesn't help us with the other parts of the parallelogram. Like, these two have to be the same and these two have to be the same.
oh, I see.
But we don't have anything that, like, corresponds matching. Okay. More the same. I know. Okay. So same thing. Yes or no, and then why.
Yes.
Okay. So this is yes. Reason. We could do, there's two options.
Opposite angle.
We could do opposite angles are congruent,
Or supplementary.
or consecutive interior angles are supplementary. Both of those would work.
I'm just gonna say
Yes.
yes for the next one.
Yes, right?
Ooh.
No.
No.
I can't see it. I can't see. 'cause
But
it's
don't
going
they
up
match?
this way.
There's
Okay,
no-
this is a
No.
tricky one.
No, because
I
aren't you
think
supposed to?
yes.
Can you only? You
No,
have to
because
know
what-
two
what about,
angles
like,
or two sides.
There's two angles, but where's like the one?
Do we have any other
No,
markings?
just have one.
Yeah.
angle.
Okay,
Yeah.
so then we'll say no, not enough info.
I haven't seen this, like, printed.
Is it best not to like look too much into these things? Like if you look at it from first glance and it doesn't look like very like
Yeah.
information, don't like try to.
But I flip at second lens.
Is this one?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
Oh, what did the parallel, or did the parallel?
That
Right.
just means it's parallel.
Oh, so just because they're
No.
parallel, does that mean these two have to have the same length?
No.
No. So even though it looks like a parallelogram, this one's going to be no, same thing.
Not enough info.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't there like a sign to put like not enough info? Or is it
Like a little circle with a slash. That's like,
Yeah.
Wait, what would it be?
I see that one.
just not, I just wrote not enough information.